Okay, so today I want to study a man spoken of in long, long sections of the Old Testament. Maybe one of Israel's greatest kings, other than his father, the great King David, was a man named Solomon. He was David's son. Unfortunately, through David's bizarre affair with his mother, Bathsheba, an innocent woman who didn't really know what was going on there, but got duped into having an affair with King David. When she died, she asked David to swear to her that her son would sit upon his throne. And so Solomon was the fulfillment of that. But here's the phrase I want you to remember as we study Solomon. He began in wisdom at age 15 and ended in foolishness at age 55. Began in wisdom, age 15, ended in foolishness, age 55. Tom Brady couldn't hold a candle to Solomon in terms of his success. In fact, I'm going to summarize some of Solomon's stunning accomplishments because you almost have to hear them articulated. This is what the Bible tells us he accomplished. Again, he became king by age 15, even though some of us are hoping to get a decent job by age 50. This guy reigned for 40 uninterrupted years of peace. No attacks on Israel during that entire 40-year period of time. He consolidates the kingdom of Israel to the largest size it was in all of history by annexing territories. Second thing it tells us is that this guy literally wrote the book about women. We have a book called the Song of Songs in the Old Testament, which is Solomon's attempt at kind of like an ancient version of Playboy magazine. Here's a righteous approach to loving women. In fact, we're told he practiced quite a lot at this. He was the husband of 700 wives, the Bible tells us. He had 300 concubines. So this guy had 1,000 women in his harem. Pretty significant. Next thing we're told is that he was a famous poet and songwriter. He wrote, the Bible tells us, over 1,000 songs. And many of those are called psalms, and we see them in the book of Psalms. We're not sure of some of them, but many of them were written by Solomon. As a songwriter, he was unparalleled. He had a lot more top 40 hits than the Beatles ever thought of having. He blew Michael Jackson out of the water in terms of being prolific and popular in his songwriting. Next thing the Bible tells us, he was a respected scientist. He was a professor, a teacher of botany, plant life, and a teacher on zoology, animal life. He was seen as a great expert in both those areas. He was Israel's first shipbuilder. In fact, some would say the greatest shipbuilder in history. He built Israel's first powerful naval fleet. He was a military genius. He had amassed, it tells us in the Bible, 1,400 chariots. You have to understand, a chariot was like a nuclear bomb in its day. It could dominate the battlefield. He had 1,400 of those, and he owned a fleet of 12,000 military horses. Military-trained horses that he could take into battle. That's why he kept the peace for 40 years, because he went unchallenged to the very end. He was an able philosopher. In fact, some would say that the greatest philosophical textbook ever written is in the Old Testament, the book of Ecclesiastes. Probably Solomon wrote it late in his kingdom, reflecting on all the things he'd learned from his foolish mistakes. His prowess as an architect and a builder make Donald Trump look like an inner-city slumlord. He builds the temple in Jerusalem that was, at the time, considered one of the 7 great wonders of the world. It took 7 years to build it, and he employed 150,000 workers to get the job done. Now, it's interesting to note, and we'll come back to this, he also built an amazing palace, Solomon's personal palace. He took 13 years to build. And we're told that it could serve his employees, could eat their meal that day. Somewhere between 5 and 15,000 employees could eat at his employee cafeteria. His wealth was unparalleled in history. His yearly income from home interest, we're told, was 25 tons of gold. On a conservative estimate, that's approximately $5 billion US a year. That's conservative. That's just his home income, $5 billion a year. He was literally dripping in gold. And in fact, we're told he could not calculate the income from his outside interests. It wasn't just the $5 billion a year he got from inside Israel, but all the tributes and all the things he got from outside of Israel was so great that he couldn't even calculate how much he had. That's when you know you're rich, when you don't even know how much you have because it's so much you can't count it. Well, that is a unusually Tom Brady successful man. So I want you to take a minute here now and read two stories that give us an insight into why Solomon had such stunning success. Okay? First of all, I want you to read 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 5 through 14. 1 Kings 3, 5 through 14. And then 1 Kings 4, 29 through 34. And that's the first part I want you to read because it tells about Solomon's gift of wisdom from God. And then when you finish those, I want you to read 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 16 through 28, which is the most famous story about Solomon's wisdom as a great judge in Israel. And after you finish that, spend a little time discussing, what do you think people would ask God for, really ask God for, if they were given one free wish?